Hi everyone, I'm Carla Rodriguez Diaz, and for my anti violence program, I'll be focusing on training within Child Protective Services, also known as CPS. Now, before we dive in, we need to know what exactly Child Protective Services is and what they do. Child Protective Services are designed to help children who have been or are at risk of becoming victims of abuse or neglect. Agencies assess and investigate reports of child abuse, neglect, or dependency as required by state law, and if necessary, they work with families to develop a family case plan identifying services to reduce risk to the children and prevent the abuse or neglect from occurring again. And by the way, all of the information on this slide was found on the official Ohio government page for Child Protection Services. Moving on to the reason behind this project, I aim to educate the public about the problems in various areas of the welfare system, specifically with child protection services. The primary goal of this training, as well as my own personal one, is to offer resources that equip social workers in the department with the necessary tools to accurately evaluate situations while ensuring they have a manageable workload. I believe it's important for the public to gain awareness because, in doing so, they can kickstart a domino effect. Helping social workers improve their decision making will lead to children living in better conditions and getting support, as well as their parents. This training is important to me because I believe government programs should have the resources to create change in the lives of families. I wanted to focus on this subject specifically because of a previous case I learned about, which I will elaborate on in the following slides. Before I do that, though, I did want to include a trigger warning because there will be mentions of abuse, neglect, and descriptions of injuries. Now, the case that I'll be explaining today is that of Gabriel Fernandez, and you can see the pictures of him on the left. Gabriel Fernandez was just 8 years old when he died, and he endured months of torture, isolation, and beatings. During his early years, he lived with his great uncle and his boyfriend, then his grandparents later on. Unfortunately, in 2012, his mother, Pearl Fernandez, decided she wanted him back, but not for the right reasons. After coming back, he lived with her partner, Isarro Aguirre, and his two siblings. Later on, he became the primary target of his mother and her boyfriend's abuse. Gabriel's teacher began to notice signs as he would ask her if it was normal to get hit, slapped, and have his hair pulled. This raised some red flags, and she decided to reach out to a caseworker. In the end, though, Gabriel Fernandez was failed by his parents as well as the system. He was found with broken ribs, BB pellet wounds, a fractured skull, and missing teeth, ultimately succumbing to his injuries and passing away on May 24, 2013, at Children's Hospital, Los Angeles. To aid you in visualizing the extent of the abuse, the image on the right features a full body map of Gabriel Fernandez, with each mark indicating an area of trauma. He had missing skin, abrasions on various parts of his bodies, ligature marks on his ankles, black eyes, bruises, and cuts everywhere. Moving on to the big question throughout this case, how exactly was Gabriel Fernandez failed? According to court documents, separate investigations by several agencies looking into physical and even sexual abuse were opened for the family, yet Gabriel was never removed from the home. Whenever authorities would pay a visit to their house, they would believe Pearl's words over the physical evidence shown on Gabriel's body. And despite various reports made by family members and those who came in contact with Gabriel, no effective action was taken. In this situation, the social workers were managing a heavy caseload, which prevented them from giving him the attention he truly needed. In the end, I believe this contributed to his death as they overlooked many signs of abuse that were evident on his body. I hope this case has provided you with valuable insight into issues regarding CPS, and as I continue my training, I will now be focusing on the 5 key problems within the system to highlight my background research. Starting off, the first issue comes from dealing with an extreme workload. Due to an increased volume of cases, the child protection system's capacity to respond decreases. This leads to role strain and burnout within the system as workers begin to feel indifferent towards their jobs. Going off of that, role conflict and role ambiguity are issues as well. Role conflict occurs when workers have contradicting expectations placed on them, and role ambiguity is a result of having unclear directions as to what is expected. This type of problem within their work leads to various issues for not only the workers but also for the families they serve. Now, the third problem is a rise in number of abused children. The number of abused children has risen exponentially because an increased volume of cases has stressed the child protection system's capacity to respond. Something I learned was that the response to child abuse has transformed from private agencies to public governmental ones. And since they have other duties to fulfill, it makes it almost impossible to concentrate fully on child protective services. Moving on to another key problem, it's evident that reforms are needed to help those in need. The process of receiving, screening, and investigating reports of child abuse should be taken more seriously. And on the right side of the slide, I included a sample overview of how these cases can be dealt with. Workers in child protective services and child welfare systems should follow this outline, which begins with the report of abuse or neglect. The last steps do vary a lot as multiple factors decide which path needs to be taken, but this part is crucial. Now, the final problem is a lack of information. Many new parents don't know about services that can be beneficial, and they need to have access to information that teaches them about parenthood. I believe we should focus on first time parents so they have the resources to succeed in their new part of life. And we should also teach single mothers, single fathers, and pregnant women about parenthood in a positive light. Also, it's very important to provide ways to release stress and give tactics that can help parents choose a non-violent approach with their kids. Moving on to the intended audience for my anti-violence training, the three main groups are social workers in the system, parents, and their children. Concerning each group, the information I tend to share consists of learning to be successful in their respective role, knowing when to ask for help, and recognizing the signs of abuse or mistreatment. I aim to provide education about problem areas within the current system so we can use it for positive outcomes. People who choose to work in social services usually want to impact someone's life and make it better, but I believe it has become harder to do so due to corruption within the system. As a result, a revision is needed to understand what needs to change to create a workplace that puts society first. Now that I've explained what information is needed, I'm going to focus on how we can reduce the issues with the anti-violence practices. Starting off with social workers, the system needs to help them understand their job guidelines and expectations so they know what is needed of them. They should also reduce their workload to a manageable amount. And although the term manageable varies from person to person, the recruitment of new staff, decrease of number of cases per worker, and supportive supervision can all be helpful. Lastly, primary prevention and mandated reporting can help alleviate these issues. Primary prevention refers to aiming to prevent something before it occurs by removing hazards, changing behaviors, or increasing resistance, and mandated reporting is the legally enforceable duty to report when there are suspicions of violence within a family. Shifting to the families utilizing these services, we can help make parents comfortable with asking for help while in tough situations. Child abuse could be prevented in all families if parents have the knowledge and support they need. If we provide thorough information and make all parents comfortable with asking for and using help, particularly when informal support is limited, we can create a stronger network of support that empowers families. This approach not only strengthens parental confidence but also fosters a safer environment for children. Lastly, we should promote prenatal and infant care. Prenatal care is important because it helps ensure the health of both the mother and the baby during pregnancy. And by focusing on these early stages of parenthood, we can help them raise their kids in a healthier and more positive manner. Now that we've gone through this training, how will we evaluate training effectiveness? If I were to launch this program in the real world, there are three main ways that I would assess and analyze these practices. First, I would compare percentages of role strain and burnout with the effects of role ambiguity and conflict. Providing graphs and physical proofs of workers and their perception would be crucial to see how my training could potentially affect the numbers. Second, I would inspect randomized cases throughout the year and the effectiveness of the worker. This would provide real-time proof of how the practices are being implemented so we can make sure that workers are helping the families to their best ability. Lastly, I would look at the ratio of violent acts and how many are solved within the system. We check the data on any violence-related acts in family settings and see if these solutions would be helpful. Similarly to our weekly lectures, I have a well-being theme for my training, which is taking a break. Starting off, what does taking a break imply? This means finding a certain time each day where you can ease up, unwind, recharge, put your feet up, and take a load off. Moving on, what exactly is the importance of breaks? They allow us to recharge, de stress, have more energy, and face hard things with resilience, patience, and care. Now that we understand breaks, what are some ways to take one? In my personal life, I enjoy taking a break by doing something I enjoy and love, like napping, listening to music, painting, or playing with my dog. When it comes to social workers, this can be done by maintaining a manageable workload, having designated break times, or even talking with colleagues every day. Now, for parents, this can look like something as simple as calling a friend, going on a walk, or even going out to eat. With them specifically, I want to stress the importance of having a life outside of their parental roles. Since parenthood can be extremely hard and challenging, they must understand that it's perfectly acceptable for them to take breaks as well. To finish my training, I'll be talking about my communication goal for this program, which is asking for help. When it comes to social workers, if a case or work in general is overwhelming, they should be open to communicating these feelings to others at work. And as mentioned in the anti-violence practices, parents should be willing to seek support, whether it's friends, families, or professional resources, as reaching out can provide encouragement and guidance. Now, why exactly is asking for help so important? The reasoning behind this goal is to teach everyone that needing help is not a sign of weakness, but instead it shows the willingness of a person to learn and grow through the assistance of others. So, I hope this training has made you all more aware of issues within child protection services. And if you know anyone that could benefit from this program, don't hesitate to reach out and be the one that makes a difference. Thank you all for listening. And then now, this is all of my references. So, if you want to look at any of the articles, feel free to. Thank you.